Infinity Gamer here, and in today's video I'm going to give you a walkthrough on the Army Builder app for CodeOne. Now this is an essential piece of kit if you're going to be playing CodeOne games. It's a free resource that Corvus Belli have built, and it enables you to build your army lists to then take those models into battle. So we'll do a walkthrough on how to use it and where to go to get it. So pretty much everything you need in order to familiarize yourself with it. Just a caveat on this one. I'm not going to be talking about the units contained within it or what a good list looks like. I'm just going to be showing you the tools that are available. Second caveat to this is that the tools are only a few days old. They're a little bit buggy and glitchy, so there might be changes, things might be changed, but I'm going to give you a walkthrough as how it stands right now so that you know the basic mechanics of it for when it is ready and good for you to use. So the first thing you need to do is head on to the Googles, type in something like Infinity Army Builder CodeOne. That will bring up Infinity CodeOne as the top result and then Infinity Army Mobile Beta as the second result. Ignore the second one. That is the current N3 Army Builder. That's probably what is going to get updated once N4 drops. So ignore it for now and focus on the very top result. If you want to just go straight to the URL, it's infinitytheuniverse.com. This is to access the desktop version of the Army Builder. There are also apps available for Apple and Android. So in your App Store or Google Play Store, just search for CodeOne Army Builder and you should be able to find that. So even though I'm taking you through the desktop version today, the user experience is incredibly similar. So everything I teach you will be relevant to if you use the mobile app. Infinity the Universe, that is the main resource for CodeOne. So this is a good website for you to familiarize yourself with anyway. As we get onto the homepage, there's a whole bunch of things on here. As you can see, there are only 4 armies that are currently available for you to play with in CodeOne. Obviously, if you're watching this in 6 months to a year's time, there will be a lot more than this 4, so don't panic. We've got Pano, Combined Army, O12, and Yu Jing. And as you go down, you're given a helpful reminder that basically if you want to get into CodeOne, or Infinity via CodeOne, the best way to do it is to look for anything that has the CodeOne logo on it. So obviously at the moment, there's Operation Coldstrom. Then there is the Beyond Coldstrom box. And then as you can see, they're kind of teasing that there's going to be other things coming. So the key thing is that if it's got the CodeOne logo on the box, it means it is part of the armies that you can build in this army builder and take to battle. There are going to be lots of Infinity models out there for the factions that are launched, where there are models for that faction that aren't supported in CodeOne. So a prime example of that is something like O12. There's Team Sirius that's available and quite popular. Not actually compatible with CodeOne, even though it's part of O12, which is a compatible faction. So just to save any confusion, if it's got CodeOne on the box, then it's definitely compatible. Otherwise, you can check the Army Builder, which is obviously what we're going to go to next. So as we scroll back up to the homepage, there's a big how to play icon. Click on that and that'll take you through to all the resources required to actually get started. On the left-hand side, there's the quick start rules, which I've got a link for above my how to play using those quick start rules. And then on the right-hand side are the full rules for CodeOne, which are in a separate video, which is to come shortly. So as you scroll down, you've got a recommended list of Pano and a recommended list of Yu Jing. So Corvus Belli have already created these lists for you. So if you don't want to go through the rigmarole of creating your own, or it's just your first game and you don't really know what a good list looks like, then maybe use one of these to just throw some models on the table and give it a bit of a go. If you do want to build your own list, then click on the bottom left-hand button, which says, do you want to create your own lists? That will then take you through to the Army Builder. Now, if you're doing this on Google Chrome, there's a chance you might get a 404 error, which is what I've been experiencing. But if you do it on Safari, then you won't receive that error. So then you're going through to the Army Builder, and again, it's only got the 4 factions that are available currently. Again, because this is a tutorial that's just going to show you how to use the Army Builder, it doesn't really matter which one I choose because I'm not going to focus too much on the units. I'll let you explore that yourself. So we'll go through and have a look at some O12. So on the left-hand side, we have all of the troopers available for O12. So that's Kappa, Lynx, Delta, you can see the entire list there. So this is again, all of the available models to be able to build a compliant CodeOne list. So if you are looking to go into one of these 4 factions and you want to know which models you need to get in order to be playing CodeOne, maybe start with coming here and having a look at these and then looking online for those models. So a couple of things to note here is that each of the units, you'll notice has a little symbol on the left, its name, and then a small little tab above it with some letters. That is the type of trooper that is. So LI stands for light infantry, there's medium infantry, heavy infantry, REM tags. So I won't go into too much about what each of those tags mean, but they're appropriate for, as you play CodeOne, certain things affect certain unit types or apply to certain unit types. So that helps you there. If you're looking for a certain unit type and don't just want to look at the tags, there are filters at the top. So if you click the type, then you can see light infantry, medium infantry. So if you click on any of those unit types, for example, medium infantry, it will bring up all of the units that have the medium infantry type. So these filters are quite useful. And then just click type at the top if you want to deselect whatever you have done. Skills, exactly that. So if you want someone who's going to parachute in, that sort of thing. So again, once you familiarize yourself with the game, you'll know what a lot of this means, but this is where you come to filter out by skills. I'm not going to use this video to go into great detail around what it means, just how you use the tool. Filter by equipment, filter by weapons, and then filter by ammo type. Now obviously different ammo types do different things, so once you become familiar with what they do, you might want to include certain ones. So this is where you would come to see all the units that use that ammo type. Keeping on the top row, there's then the ability for you to sign in to the Army Builder. Now this is handy because if you obviously want to use a different device, you might build it on the app and then you want to transfer over to the desktop, it will be good for you to sign in so that you keep all your loaded lists and saved lists and things like that. The USB signal there is hacking programs. So one of the skills that are available are units are hackers. They can do things to their own units and they can do things to enemy units. So these are the hacking programs that they could use. So again, I'm not going to go too much into hacking because that's worth its own video, but that's where you go to find it. The little gun symbol at the top there is the weapons chart. Now its default setting is to basically show you every weapon that's in Infinity, which is good because you can familiarize yourself with what your opponents might have and just learn what's good and what's not. You can limit that to your faction by going across one, which is obviously handy. And then you can look at unit and list once you've got things selected. So once you have created a list, you click the list icon and that will show you all the weapons that your list has, which is good for quick reference and you're not having to search through a big long list of irrelevant weapons. So that's pretty handy. Then we've got the load list icon. So if you've got a couple of lists saved, this is where you would come to load them or delete them. And then you can import army codes. You can see that I'm helpfully seeing this in Spanish. It's one of the fantastic glitches that exist right now is that the language settings don't always work. But the importing army codes is once you have saved a list, you can generate a unique code for that list. You can then share that with friends or people in your local meta to potentially get feedback on that list. And what you would do is share that army code. They'd come into their own army builder list, enter that code, and they'd be able to see your exact list as it is in the army builder. Then they can improve it, change it, and then send you a code to show you an alternative. So it sounds like something you wouldn't use a lot because why would you be sharing lists with potential opponents, especially if you're coming from other games? But it's just part of Infinity. People are always willing to give you feedback, and this is the easiest way to show a list rather than listing out, word by word what you've got. So yeah, pretty cool feature. The 3 dots there take you back to the main menu, so we're not going to click those because I don't want to go there. Then this little box here, she's your virtual assistant throughout the Army Builder, Sybil. The box that you see here is where your list will be once you start adding things. So we'll give that a go next. Options down here, you want to come to this fairly early actually. You can set whether it's in English or Spanish. At the moment, doesn't matter what you set, some bits will come up in Spanish and some bits will come up in English, but once it's fixed, it will be a lot better because the current Army Builder is fixed and looks excellent. And also ranges, you want to change, I think it's default to centimeters the first time you come in here, and you want to change that to inches pretty quickly. I noticed that the rules often use inches in their demos, and so you might be familiar with unit profiles from reading the rules first, and then if you come over here and you see it in centimeters, you'll suddenly think that some of your units have got a 10-inch by 10-inch move, and it's actually just because they're still in centimeters. So switch that over to inches as early as you can, and then that's the options. So before we get started, we want to give this list a fairly unique name, which I am not very imaginative at. And this means that when you save them, obviously you know exactly what you're going to. Now, one thing that's worth noting, and I'll show you towards the end, is when you have finished a list and when you go into a game of Infinity, you typically print 2 lists. One of them is yours and contains all your secret information, your private information, stuff that only you want to know. And then the other one is the open list, which you give to your opponent. That gives them kind of like a scaled back version of your list of the public information that they're allowed to know. So how far a unit can move, all that sort of stuff, but not necessarily who your lieutenant is. And again, not going to go down that rabbit hole. but you print off 2 lists. And so giving it a unique name can also be an opportunity for you to give your opponent a laugh by naming it something funny, or misleading them by saying it's named after a unit that isn't actually in there. But that's all the game within a game. Let's have a look at the units and how you add units to your list. So you've obviously got them here on the left-hand side, and this is everything that's available for O12. So for example, if I wanted to add a Crusher to my list, first I click on Crusher, and that would bring up the unit profile, the unit profiles that are available. So I've got the data sheet here, or the main unit profile, which shows the characteristics. It also shows me all the special skills that this unit has. So Mimetism and Special Operative are 2. Again, not going to go down that rabbit hole just yet. I'm just showing you how to use the Army Builder. You can also see the unit type here, and you can also see what type of order it generates and how many of those orders. You can then see the different types of Crusher that you could put in a list. So here we've got a Crusher with forward deployment plus 8. We've got a Crusher with forward deployment plus 3.2, a Crusher with combat jump and parachutist. So those are the skills that it has available to it. Then we go into its armament, its equipment, and its peripherals, if applicable. So if there are no pipes, which are these little things here, then all of it is just armament. Then there's a single pipe, and it will be equipment. And then if there's a double pipe, that will be the peripheral equipment. So in most cases, it won't be relevant. But here you can see that the armament for this Crusher is a multi-rifle, a nanopulsar, and a pistol. This one's a submachine gun, nanopulsar, and pistol. This one's a boarding shotgun and a pistol. So then it shows you any melee weapons that these guys have. So CC weapon is just a general close combat weapon. It generally is a knife. If they've got something special, it will be here as well. SWC is the special weapons cost. So when you go for some slightly high-tech or bigger units, they'll have a special weapons cost. Now, your lists are generally limited to, I think it's 1 SWC per 5 points that you guys are playing to. So if you're only doing a 5-point battle, you'll get 1 SWC. Most games will be 30 points in CodeOne, so you'll get 6 SWC. So this will show you how many SWC that will cost. So not only are you limited to 30 points, but you're also limited to 6 SWC. That's worth bearing in mind as you're building your list. So how do you actually add a model to the list? So let's take the Crusher, for example, for the Special Naval Demolition Team. Once you've found the model that you want to add, so we'll go with the Combat Jump Parachutist, you just click on it and it gets added to your list. So let's have a quick look at this little box down here and see what's going on. So we've already spoken about the name. You can set the max points limit. So obviously the maximum points you can use in CodeOne is 30, but you can use increments below that. And there are a couple of recommendations in the main CodeOne rules as to the game limits you might choose to use. It would not be uncommon for you to be playing a 15-point game, for example, especially as models are still coming out. But 30 is going to be the maximum and will probably be the main benchmark for most CodeOne games. So it might be good for you to start to get into the habit of. So that's the maximum points available. Then you will see over here the amount of SWC that you have spent and the amount of points that you have spent or you've accumulated within your list. Carrying on this theme, let's have a look at a couple of these icons. So this X here is telling you whether you have a compliant list. So if you aren't sure if it's showing the X, you can click on it and it will tell you exactly what you're doing wrong. So for example, right now we haven't selected a lieutenant for this list. So that's why it's throwing up an error. You can obviously bin the list, which we don't want to do right now. And then you can generate an army code. So that's this unique code here. And I spoke about that as we were going through the top row. But this army code is for this list. So if you share that army code with a friend, they'll be able to input that and they'll be able to see the list that you have generated to give you feedback on it. You can then see save, which is what it's doing here. And you can do some comments on that and save it to your local. And then print, which we will talk about right at the very end, because that's the last step once you are happy with a list. So then you can see here we've got the name of the models, or the troopers, sorry, that are in your list. You can see the armaments and the equipments. Now this is an exact copy of what you saw beforehand with armament, equipment and peripherals. So this is just summarizing that information, just condensing it into your list. Same with melee weapon is featuring here. SWC costs, you can see which units are costing you the most, and it's the same with the points cost, which sits under the C there. If you add a unit that you no longer want to include, hover over it and you'll get the bin icon there. So in this row, we've got group 1, and then we've got the amount of orders that are currently being generated by the models here. Now, you can only actually have one group in CodeOne, and you will be thrown an error if you go to a second group. The reason why it gives you the capability to create more than one group is because this is going to probably be the framework app for N4, where it is going to be possible for you to have two groups of soldiers, each generating their own orders. So even though you physically can create more groups, you will get an error and it won't be on an eligible list. So don't really try. A group is limited to 10 models, which is the maximum. Sorry, I keep doing this. A group is limited to 10 units or troopers. So you shouldn't be playing with more than that for a legitimate CodeOne game. Now, the reason why I corrected myself is because it's units, not models. So there are a couple of instances where the unit contains 2 models. That would not cause you to breach it because that second model is a peripheral and so is not counted as part of your overall unit count. An example will make this easier. So the second model I'm actually going to add to this list is one of my favorites. It's a Delta, and I'm going to add the Delta with Yudbot. And you can see here, it's coming after the double pipe, which means, as you can see as a reference here, after the double pipe is the peripheral unit. So even though it has its own profile because it is a separate model, it's not counted as part of your 10 troop counts. The Delta is counting that. So let's add the Delta with Yudbot just to show you. See, it occupies 1 row, and that is perfect. And you can see it's got its own little miniature point cost. So the Delta itself is 3, and the Yudbot is 0.5. But you can see that the 0.5 is not actually counting towards your overall points cost. So my belief, and again, I haven't played a lot of CodeOne yet, so I'm not sure how this actually equates in terms of the reality of rules, is that there are some missions where the points values of the models you've killed count towards your victory points. So it's likely that the Yudbot has a 0.5 points value for those sorts of scenarios, but it doesn't actually count towards your points. I'm going down a rabbit hole. I'm going to stop because it's not important. So the purpose of this video, which is just showing you how to use the tools. So again, you see all the information that you need here. So we've got 2 models in our list currently. Let's add a couple more. So one of my other favorites is the Epsilon, the bad guy sniper, who I really, really love fielding. I'm going to run him with the multi-sniper. And you can see that I'm starting to accumulate some SWC now. So I'm using support weapon costs. So the Epsilon's incurring a couple of those. Let's go for another one of my favorites, the Omega. Love this guy. Again, going to run the HMG. So I'm at 3 SWC. I'm limited to 6, as you'll remember me saying. So I've got to start to be careful at some stage. As I say that, I'm just going to throw in a Gamma Lieutenant with HMG. Let's throw in a couple more models. What else do I like the look of? Again, it doesn't matter hugely. Let's throw in a Hippolyta. Let's throw in a Crusher. Another one. I'm saying another one. A quick way to see how many of a model you're allowed in is to look at the AVA, which is the available limit. So you can see here saying available 2. So I can have 2 Crushers in any one list. If I was to look at something like Hippo, I'm only allowed 1. So if I tried to add a second, I would throw an error and it would say I've got too many of them in there. So check the AVA, but you will get a warning anyway, so it's pretty difficult for you to go over your limits. Cyclops, they don't exist yet. So on that theme, if you want to use a unit that you do not have a model for, something like the Cyclops, for example, the model isn't yet out, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't have fun experimenting with it. You just have to find a model that has exactly the same silhouette profile, so the S2 of this model, and then you can legally use it as a proxy. A lot of models are S2, so that's actually a pretty easy one for you to proxy in. So to do that, I'm going to throw in an MSV1 Psychop with marksman rifle. Where am I at? So I've spent 23 points. I've spent 4.5 SWC. I've got 30, so I've got 7 left to go there. And I've got 6, so I'm 1.5 away. All right, that's pretty good. And how many models am I at? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 3 models and not a lot of points left. So let's find something pretty small. Copperbots, you're a bit too expensive. Oh, there we go. Occo Copperbots with just a combi rifle. Let's throw you in there. I could have 2 of them, but I don't think I want to. Millicent, have you got anything? Oh, you're pretty expensive. If I do that, that's all of my SWC used up. But a missile launcher is probably going to be fun. Oh, decisions. One SWC, 2 cost for an HMG. Let's go with a Millicent because that looks like it's going to be fun. So I'm at my SWC limit. If I try and add anything with an SWC cost, it's going to throw an error. Currently, you can see I've got a compliant list. Now, when you click on that and it says it's compliant to be used in ITS Season 11, ITS is the Infinity Tournament System, and Season 11 is the current season of competition. So again, these are global competitions that happen, and then during that season, you get ranked internationally. So don't worry too much about that, because even if you're just playing a casual game, your list has to be compliant with ITS rules anyway for it to just be a legal list. So even though it's telling you that your list isn't compliant with an ITS game, forget about the ITS system. It's basically, can you play this in CodeOne legally? So still pay attention to the tick and the cross, even if you're not playing at a tournament level. Cuervo, you can come into my list. You're not costing any SWC. So let's pop one in there. And then I've got 1 point left. I seem to remember that one of these copper bots, there we go. Oh no, I've gone over the model count. So you're only allowed 10 units in a list. Now you can see it's allowed me to create a second group because it's physically got the functionality, but it's no longer compliant with CodeOne. So I've got to get rid of that. And I either go back through one of these, or I chop and change it, or I just take the fact that I'm 1 point less than I could be using, which is still fine. Don't need to panic too much about that. So I check the tick. I have a compliant CodeOne list. Fantastic. I'm going to save this so that I can use it in the future. Unique to version 2, just so that I can see that it's different. Save it locally. And then you can see it's here in my loaded lists. So I could go through and delete a bunch of these now. Yeah, let's get rid of a couple of them because they're not necessary. But that's saved, so I can come back to this list in the future. So what's the next step? I've created a list that I think is going to be good in a game of Infinity CodeOne. Well, the next step is that you actually have to print your list. Seems a bit weird in today's day and age, but there's a reason for it. So if you click the print icon, you'll get the option to print a couple of PDFs. One of those is going to be your private list. That's going to contain information that you want to see, but that your opponent is not allowed to see. So that's going to be things like who your lieutenant is, which you'll see as your gamma. It might include something like the Crusher combat jump, who actually deploys secretly midway through the game. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole, but he would not appear on your courtesy list, but he'll be on your private list. On top of your private list information, there will also be the weapon profiles for your list. Now you can see that by going back into the weapons section and just clicking on list. And now that we have created a list, it's only showing us the weapons for the units that you have picked in your list. So it's kind of like you don't have to go searching through different layers of rules. You can just come straight to what you've got. That will be included on your private list that you print off. Same with if you've included a hacker in your list. Again, not going to go down that rabbit hole, but if you have, it will include the hacking programs so that you know what you can do and when you can do it. The second PDF that gets printed off is the courtesy list, which is the list that you give your opponent. Now, you have to provide that list with every game. It's not just a courtesy, it's part of the game. Now, obviously, if you're playing with mates, they're probably going to be a bit friendly and not really care about that sort of stuff. But as soon as you're playing someone at a local club, or if you're playing someone else, and if you do go into tournament scenes, then the courtesy list becomes essential. And it's just your opponent's ability to kind of see your weapon profiles. So as they're trying to make tactical decisions, they can kind of see the units that they're allowed to see and look at their abilities and all the public information that is open and everyone is allowed to know, but it just gives them a quick reference guide. Now, as mentioned, it won't have information like who your lieutenant is or any secret models that you've got. So you don't need to worry, you basically just hand it to them and that's what they're allowed to have. Saying that, if you're playing someone and they hand you a courtesy list and it only has 9 models on it, you can kind of assume that there's a model that's going to come in at a secret stage at some point. Because you know that every CodeOne list should have 10 models, if a courtesy list only contains 9 or 8, then you can kind of safely assume that those extras are probably going to drop in at you in turn 2, turn 3, but they're not going to be part of deployment. Not going to go down this rabbit hole, but you can make a couple of assumptions based on lists. Other things to note before we sign off is that you would have noticed that as I was going through a couple of units that it looks like there were hyperlinks for a few things. So especially in the special skills, something like surprise attack, camouflage, mimetism. Now, currently, at least with me going through it right now, those don't link anywhere. But how it has worked historically, and therefore I'm assuming it's going to work in the future, is that these hyperlinks went through to a wiki where you could then read the special rules for camouflage, for mimetism, and things like that. Really handy if you just needed to refresh your memory because you were using a new model or you were using a model you haven't used for a while, to be able to go through and just go, oh yeah, that's how this rule applies and that's what this means. So if you're seeing it as a hyperlink like I am, but it's not showing you anything to click through to, don't worry. I think that's a functionality that's going to come soon. If you're in doubt, all of these rules are in the main CodeOne rules and some of them are in the quick start rules. So just go over to those to familiarize yourself if you need to. That is everything that I can think of to go through. That is a real quick run through of a tool that you're probably going to use a lot. So you do build all of your lists in this before you have a game, save them, load them, print off copies, and then come back to them in the future. It's actually quite nice to have a printed version of your list. You can write notes on it, including what you want to do and secret things, how you want to deploy them and stuff like that. So it is actually quite a nice element of being able to go to a game with just a couple of sheets of paper, all your models, and basically be good to go and not have massive codexes and rule books and things like that to just play a simple game. That's the end of this video. Thank you so much for your patience. You'll also see that I'm actually on Instagram as well as @the_InfinityGamer. That's a lot of behind the scenes stuff. So if I'm painting models, if I'm in the middle of a game, I'll probably upload a photo of how it's going before the battle report then gets posted on the channel. So feel free to follow me on Instagram as well. I do appreciate all of you that have subscribed to the channel, that leave your comments and give us a like and give us a thumbs up. I really appreciate your support. It might not seem like a lot to you, but it is amazing for me when I get a notification that someone's liked a video, put a comment on there. And thank you all so much for being so positive with a lot of your comments. I do not mind receiving criticisms about how I can do these videos better. I really appreciate it when it comes through, but I also appreciate that a lot of people take the time to just put in a little positive word. I do appreciate that. Thank you so much for that. And keep up with this CodeOne series as I go and explain a lot of the stuff, the tools, the resources that are coming out. And thank you very much for your patience, and I will see you with the next video.